Hey everyone, welcome back to Armchair Technician. Today we're going to take a look at another old Gibson amp. This one is from the late 1940s. This is the Gibson BR-6. Did pretty much a complete renovation on this one, so let's get into it. First produced in 1946, the Gibson BR-6 was a high-end student/low-end professional model in Gibson's post-war catalog. Topping out at around 10 watts, it had two 6V6 output tubes and very modest features. After a design change in late 1948, the BR-6 was still notably lacking a tone control, mic input, and pilot light. It was quickly upstaged by its larger siblings in Gibson's lineup and was discontinued in 1955. Alright, so upon first inspection here, just open this thing up. Now this is why I love opening up these old amps from, especially the ones from the 50s, because they've just been around so long that anything could happen and you never know what you're going to see when you open these things up. So the gentleman that brought this to me was not aware that anything had been done to it. He was under the impression it was probably all original inside, because his father bought this amp new in 1950 and it's been in his family ever since. So it's kind of a family heirloom, if you will. So I was like, cool, and I was really hoping that it would be super original inside, but that is not the case whatsoever. And so I'm gonna start pointing some things out to you. So first of all, we can see that there's just a lot of components in here that were not part of the original manufacturing. This cathode bias circuit for the first preamp tube, these are new components. And when I say new, I mean within the last 30 years or so. This is not original, this capacitor here, these two resistors, and then we've got some more caps over here, down here. These have all been replaced. These are the electrolytics, or part of them. Also, it's kind of hard to see in the video, but this is the input from the guitar right here, and there's two input jacks, so they are wired together via these two resistors, and then they're going straight into the grid of the first preamp tube. But according to the circuit for this amp, this is supposed to go straight to this 500K volume pot and then into the grid. So somebody along the line came in and sent the input signal into the first preamp stage before it was sent to the volume pot and then to the phase inverter over here. Because this amp doesn't have a tone control. It's just pretty much one preamp stage here, and then this is the phase inverter tube that sends it to the power section. So this is a modification that I will probably change back to its original design. This was probably done because whoever had the amp at the time wanted it to distort more. That's just a guess, but I'm going to change this back to its original design. Alright, this is a little hard to see as well, but this capacitor here is not even supposed to be there, and it's a little bit concerning because this is for the cathode bias of the 6V6 power tubes. There's supposed to be a 200 ohm resistor here, but instead it has a 22 microfarad capacitor. So I'm a little bit impressed that this amp even works. At least that's what this guy told me, that the amp works. It just sounds kind of dark and needs some help, and so this is crazy. I'm really surprised about this. And the reason he initially contacted me to begin with was that the power cord was broken, the prong on the power cord. So you can see that this is an old lamp cord that somebody actually put in here. This is not an original component here, and you can see what kind of shape this is in. I don't know why somebody would replace a broken old two-prong cable with pretty much a shitty two-prong cable that they got off of a lamp somewhere. Which brings me to my next discovery. Someone at some point replaced, I'll use that term loosely, the electrolytic capacitors in the power section of this amp, and they used this Sprague can capacitor that was probably pulled out of a television, and you can tell because they wrapped it in electrical tape so it would fit this clamp, or again, I use the term fit loosely, no pun intended. But so this is my favorite part of the amp inside here. So we're going to obviously take this away. We're going to fix this bias circuit. Obviously we're going to replace this with a modern 3-prong grounded cable. And we're going to fix this jankiness in the input section here and bring it back to its original specifications. And that's just how we're going to get started. Obviously there's a good chance that we can find something else going on, but we're going to take care of those things first and then see where we're at. Alright, so this is the top side of this chassis. You can see I've got the new power cord going through here. I also replaced the grommet, the rubber grommet in here, which is kind of a pain in the ass, but the old one was dry rotted. Also, this hole in the chassis is for these 5 wires. These are coming into the chassis from the output transformer, which is right here. A lot of these old amps have the output transformer mounted right onto the speaker housing, and then 2 of the wires go into the speaker coil. The speaker coil is this mysterious winding in here. These old speakers don't have their own magnets, so what they did is run a little bit of voltage from the rectifier heater supply into this coil, and it creates a magnetic field in order to power the driver for the speaker. So it's pretty ingenious actually. But anyway, this is the grommet that was in this hole, and it was broken and all pulled out. So since I'm going through this amp and just redoing everything that needs to be done, I went ahead and snipped these on the inside, pulled them through, and I'm going to install a new grommet in this hole. I normally wouldn't do this because it's just, I don't know, it's a considerable amount of extra work, but I don't know, I think it's worth it. So another weird thing about this this amp is this 20,000 ohm resistor here. I just assumed that this was an original component because it's period correct, as they say. A lot of these big, huge ceramic resistors were in amps that were made around this time. But upon closer inspection, I realized that this thing isn't even supposed to be in here. It is nowhere on the schematic. So where it's been placed is from pin 4 of V3, which is the grid of this power tube here. And it's the resistor in question is going to ground. But this, as you can see, like the 2 grids are linked together here, and this is the center tap of the primary of the output transformer here. But anywhere in here is there a 20,000 ohm resistor to ground, and there's not even a 20,000 ohm resistor anywhere in this schematic, so I'm taking it out. Alright, so in the input and preamp section, I've rewired the 2 inputs. They just have a 100 kilo ohm resistor going straight to the volume pot, so that's what the schematic says. Pretty straightforward. Got a 100K right into this potentiometer here. I replaced the crappy filter cap that was here. This is another 100K, as are these. I ran the power in a different way. This is where that huge Sprague can capacitor was that came out of an old television, which is still like my favorite thing ever. But I just built a little power rail here to run everything out and over to the preamp side. That's what these two are for. Took out that big 20,000 ohm resistor that was right here, replaced it with nothing because it wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. I'm not sure what was going on with that. I changed out this bias resistor. This is a cathode biased amp. It had the incorrect value. This is closer to the actual value it's supposed to have. And I replaced this shitty power cable with this, which is a little bit overkill, but that's what they had at the hardware store, so that's what it's gonna get. Obviously this is a 3-prong grounded cable. Okay, well, it works. Has a real dark tone to it. That's partially because when the customer brought it in, he was using 6S N7s as both of the preamp tubes, but this one is supposed to be a 6S L7, and I encouraged him to go ahead and grab a 6S L7 tube because it has a higher gain rating than this one, even though the pinouts of both of these are the same. So they're interchangeable, but they're not the same tube. I always recommend using what tube is originally designed for any particular circuit. So if he does that, if he replaces this with the correct preamp tube, you probably wouldn't have to turn it on 10 to get this much volume out of it, because this is not very loud. I'm just playing it in my living room right now. But all in all, I think this is a success. It's not smoking, it's not drawing too much current. I've got my homemade current limiter active over here. The bulb is just barely glowing. This is a 200 watt bulb. If you don't have one of these, I recommend making one. They're pretty easy to build. I think it cost me like $8 for all the parts, and I even put a switch on mine. Uncle Doug has a great video about that. I would check that out. DIY current limiter. Check it out. There's some other places on the internet that has schematics for it, but highly recommended. Okay, well there you have it. Another antique amplifier brought back to life for many more years of enjoyment and use. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Armchair Technician.